Like cooking, everything has a recipe.
A set of instructions to follow in order to gain a certain result.
Music is no different.
Be it ingredients for a dish, a set list for an amazing show,
Or a release strategy for a successful launch.
these are all recipes.
Hi, we're your hosts, Sean.
And I'm Brandon.
Come and join us in our kitchen as we go through the Music Maker's Cookbook.
Let's get cooking.
Welcome to the Music Maker's Cookbook, the podcast where we help independent artists cook up recipes for success in the music industry. I'm Sean.
And I'm Autotune.
No, you're not. You are Brandon.
I am Brandon.
Which means you're actually good.
But we're gonna talk about Autotune.
This is going to be our little appetizer today. We're getting back into it. We haven't done appetizers in a while, so I'm excited to talk about something before we preface the actual meat and potatoes.
It has been a while.
It has been a while.
It has been a while.
In fact, I just brought this up in conversation before we started recording, and Brandon's like, let's do it. I'm going to fight you about this.
Yep.
I hate auto-tune with an all automatic tuning software like Waves Tune and even like Melodyne. Like I dislike.
That's crazy,
but here's
dude.
Here's the thing. I dislike it for one reason only. And that's because I work mainly as a remote mixing and mastering engineer. So a lot of the stuff I do, I don't record in-house like you do.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of the stuff is I get the files from people. And so many times, let me preface this with, I do folk rock and acoustic style music. And so many times I get files from artists that auto-tune their stuff before sending it to me. And it sounds like T-Pain.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, this is a folk song. If I can hear the auto-tune on your voice, if you are killing all the vibrato, making it perfectly in pitch, that's not musical. That's not folk. That's not good humanistic music. And it sounds like shit.
Yeah. Well,
And then also because now it's such an easy thing for people to access. I'm going my rant right off the bat.
No, go ahead.
I told you I was going to do this.
No, go ahead, because I'm going to respond.
And because they do it before they send it to me, I don't have the originals. And sometimes they even refuse to send it to me. And even when they do give me the dry versions without it, I will Melodyne it so it's on pitch, but it's more natural. And they'll tell me, hey, I want you to kill all the vibrato. I want you to make this flat. I want this to be perfectly on pitch. Yeah. And it kills me every single time because it just sounds grating. It's painful. It doesn't fit. There's no flow to it. And you didn't pitch the instruments perfectly. Most of the time they don't tune them exactly. And the vocal needs to move and flow with it. And that's why I hate those tools with how easy they are to access. Not because of what they do. When used well, I love T-Pain. And anytime it's used, I love using Melodyne. It's my favorite tool. Yeah. But when it's imprinted into it and it's just overdone and it doesn't fit and it's so bad. And I have people I've worked with who record with Waves Tune active while they're recording to pitch correct while they're recording. And it's the worst thing you could ever do because you are not getting back what you're singing. You are correcting to what you think you hear, which is a correction of what you are singing. And it just makes it sound awful all over the place, robotic, fake. It sounds like you're a SoundCloud rapper and it's awful.
Wow. That was a nuclear bomb, dude. So
I just cranked the energy up to 11 right off the bat.
You did.
This is something I've been sitting on for a while, apparently.
I'm going to have to lower your retune speed a little bit. I agree with the first part. You had me in the first half because I totally agree. Because if you can misuse the shit out of it real quick and especially for genres like you do, even I do some folk singer-songwriter stuff. It's if once you go past a certain line, it's just this is not the genre anymore. This is not the sound anymore. You've already deviated so much from it being any sort of natural ever, So I definitely agree with that 100%. Because if you misuse them, I mean, it just sounds like shit.
Exactly.
It sounds terrible.
Especially on a lead vocal. If it's backing vocals and you, auto-tune it to shit, that's okay. Because I'm going to put effects on it. I'm going to fade it in the back and it's just meant to support it. But if it's the lead vocal and it just sounds like a shitty SoundCloud rapper, which not all SoundCloud rappers are shitty, but a good portion of them are. And I can say that because I've worked with a lot of them, and I was a SoundCloud EDM dubstep guy at one point. So this is kind of a self shit. But
poor people that use SoundCloud, Sean's just ripping on it. That's terrible.
I've used it too. It's a great platform. I really enjoyed it. That's
Chance the Rapper is really bad right now.
It built up my confidence to release music because I could just put it out for free and I could get comments on it and I could share it easily. That's how I started. SoundCloud's a great platform, but it's full of people just starting out, and that's why SoundCloud Rapper is a thing. Yeah. But I've worked with clients where they send me files or they have songs early on where they auto-tune it to shit, and I have to talk them out of auto-tuning for future songs or recording with Waves Tune on the way in, which is the worst thing you could do.
I disagree with that.
Okay, we'll talk about that. But
that's where I disagreed with.
Okay, we'll talk about that. But eventually I talked them out of it, and we released a second album that doesn't have any of that stuff on it, and they go back and they're like, man, now that I hear the comparison, I I'm really unhappy with the first album now because it just sounds like shit.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And I've had situations like that before too, where shout out to my boy Dan. I've never shouted him out on the podcast before, but he's a country artist and he's down in Nashville. And he was getting his like a song done by somebody down there, and he sent it to me. He's like, dude, I just can't stand how much auto-tune is on this vocal. And like it was grabby, like super grabby.
Yeah.
But it was like the actual like the auto-tune graphical tune one. And graphical tune is super flat, like super flat if you let it be, you know? And I was like, yeah, dude, I totally agree. Like there's definitely like tricks and tips to make sure that your vocal sounds still fairly natural while still using the graphical stuff, you know? But like this one was just fucking flat. You know, it was just like, man, this is just so grabby. And yeah, I've had situations like that before. Like I can definitely, and I've done it myself, you know, until I learned like, this is too much. In like until you hear it and then like you hear something else in comparison, you're like, oh yeah, I got to dial this back. Like a ton. So I definitely agree with you there. The one with the tuning on the way in, I don't agree with you there because when you tune automatically, if you're going to do that, you do it on the way in. You don't do it after the fact. Does that kind of make sense?
Well, that's what I'm saying. I don't tune automatically.
But like you should if you need to.
I don't think, but that's a skill that's so important to have of using your ear to self-correct yourself.
Totally.
And you are just hampering yourself and you're not letting yourself develop as an artist if you are trying to correct it on the way in and you don't have that reference. Because it can be confusing when what you're hearing through your skeletal structure into your ears is different than what's coming back through your headphones. And you're always trying to hit a pitch that you're not hitting. And then you feel like the reference is there, but it's not actually there. And then if you try to melodyne it or correct it after the fact, well, now you're not getting just a confident take. You're getting a take that's moving around trying to find something that's not there. And it just makes it harder to correct it after the fact. What I usually do
But you shouldn't have to correct it after the fact if you're correcting it on the way in, right? That should be staying throughout the entire process from when you commit to it early on.
Which for certain sounds, if that's kind of the sound you want, I will agree with it. But I've never done because of the music I do, I've never done a song where that's the sound I've been going for. So this is a personal vendetta that I have because of the kind of music that I do and the kind of sounds that I like. I just don't like that sound on that kind of music. And that's a personal thing. And there's people that do it and it sounds phenomenal because it's part of the way they present themselves.
Totally.
But if someone comes to me and says like, hey, my inspirations are the Beatles and Oasis, and I use Waves tune on the way in, I'm going to say stop. Just stop.
Sure. Oh, yeah. Yeah, because you want that natural sound.
Yeah, and oh my God, the Beatles, Paul McCartney, John Lennon, like they weren't great singers.
No, definitely not.
They were not on pitch all the time. If you want to listen to bad, quote unquote, bad singing that sounds beautiful, anything Beach Boys.
Or anything Smashing Pumpkins. It works. It works. I was just listening to a song tonight, and I was like, man, like some of this is grating at sometimes, and this is not a dig at all. Like, I mean, Smashing Pumpkins is huge, and Billy Corgan's great, and everything, you know. But I was just like, man, like there's just something supernatural about this that I really enjoy. You know, it's very authentic. Yeah, it's very nice. You know, and it works because the song works. It works within the song.
Exactly.
You know?
There are flaws
works really
there,
well.
and it fits. Yeah,
exactly. So like, I definitely get your point. Like 100%. I think like
what you're doing, I guess. There are certain genres where it makes sense.
So that's where I think just our philosophies differ just a little bit, just in how we view, you know, specific, I think just recording in general is like, I definitely get like, you're not hitting, and then we'll get into the real episode. You're not hitting like what you're supposed to be hitting naturally, right? And you don't know that. And like, and you're training yourself to rely on these things going in. But I would also argue too that like, now's not the time to practice. You know, when you're in the studio, now is the time to kind of get shit done.
To get it,
and
real quick, if you don't mind me jumping real quick. What I like to do is when someone does have a hard time hitting that note or what they need to do, I will record with real-time tuning through one take, convert that into MIDI, put it on like a piano or some other
hit a note
sound.
And make sure they can reference that.
Exactly. And then play the piano underneath their voice so they can use the other sound to match their pitch to versus the mental confusion. It's kind of like how it's hard to talk when you have headphones on and there's a 50 millisecond delay.
Yeah. Oh yeah, totally.
It's kind of like that issue. Like what you're saying is not what you're hearing, and there's that mental disconnect. And the same thing does happen when you're using real-time tuning.
Yeah.
So that's where my thing is.
No,
there are ways
totally.
around it to get a better performance.
Yeah. And I think a lot of that lies within how much time is the artist willing to put in, right? Is that it's a lot of it kind of has to do with budget constraint, because we can sit there and I can coach them, be like, no, you need to go up to this right here, like you're falling flat on this C right here or something, right? And then that takes up time, and then they get frustrated, right? And then it's like, okay, well, how much are you willing to invest into this and actually make sure you get an actual like good take, right?
Yeah.
Or we could just do a couple of takes, you know what I'm saying? We average out whatever the best one is, comp it together with some very light stuff. By the way, I'm never over like a certain amount on my Waves Tune in, because I love Waves Tune because it's super lightweight on the computer.
Yeah.
So that makes tracking really easy. If I have like 60 vocal tracks, you know, that I'm running, you know what I'm saying?
But you know how to use it.
Exactly.
As a tool.
Exactly. And like, it's great because like a lot of people that I work with too also they're like, I need less of this. I'm like, perfect. Like that's great when we're backing it off ever so slightly. So I'll actually start up a little higher, then we'll back off as we go.
Okay.
But I think that's where a lot of my philosophy comes from, is just making sure like we're getting that stuff done, just because I know like time is money at the same time. You know what I'm saying? So
I guess that's where there is a slight different philosophy, because I would rather you be three whole notes sharp or flat of where you need to be, but have a killer confident performance.
Totally.
Than have a more accurate performance but not have the energy behind it.
Totally.
And I feel like it's harder to really feel it or have that energy when you've got that.
That's another thing
coming back
too,
to you.
is like confidence too.
Yeah, that's a
we're
personal
going
thing.
into
We are
like a
going-
whole because like
it's been
that has
13
to
minutes.
do, because that has to deal with the artist too. And okay, what are we talking about today?
Well, we're talking about
That could be a whole episode.
it could be a whole episode, but nope, that was our appetizer today. That was just Brandon and I going back and forth.
I'm almost
arguing.
full, dude. No, I'm just kidding.
Maybe that's what we should do for like some bonus episodes or whatnot, is just you and me talking about music and our different opinions on it.
Like different production styles. Yeah, that'd be cool.
Yeah, different things we like and dislike in music and the whole production aspect of
Totally.
it. Give us a comment if you'd like us to kind of dive more into that and have actual episodes that are more focused on what we just did.
Yeah.
But anyways, diving into it, why most musicians quit and what to do about it. The first reason most musicians quit is they listen to us banter about these things for
That's right.
13 minutes, go insane, and then just stop doing music.
Yeah, because they're like, wow, this isn't fun anymore. This totally killed my vibe. Yeah.
But no, as I said, the whole episode is why a lot of musicians quit and what can be done about it. Emphasis on what can be done about it. We really want to make sure there's a spin on, hey,
Yeah.
we
try
know
to-
this happens, but
we try to frame things positively. Everything up to this point in the new, everything up until now in the new year,
got
and
this,
even like coming out of last year, 2023 has been we've been trying to be very positive with it. This is like a little bit more of a negative one, but we're trying to frame it in a positive way so you don't go through this, right? This is just what I think we've gathered, seeing it through other people throughout the years so far. And mostly on like maybe a more local level, you know.
I mean, there's certain things that
And there's
honestly, I
certain
think
things
are
on
national
here.
levels.
Yeah, I think so too. I'm just speaking from like seeing it firsthand,
Yeah.
you know. So we're trying not to be negative with this one, and we're trying to make sure that this doesn't happen to you. And if something does creep up along this episode, that you can effectively combat it and still make sure that you're making beautiful music and doing what you want at the end of the day.
Yeah, if you feel like any of these things are happening to you, if you're on the verge of quitting or stopping making music, this is a good episode for you. Please implement some of these things so you can keep on being creative, putting your stuff out there, and making music.
Yeah.
I already said that, but let's say it again. Make music, man.
Make music, man.
Make music, man. Come
That's what we
on,
do
man.
here.
That's what we do, man. So starting off, do you want to jump right in?
Yeah. We'll start at the foundational issues. And the main one is kind of getting into music for the wrong things. I got into music at 10 years old, but like way earlier, my dad showed me a few things on the guitar and a few things on the drums. So, but up until 10 years old, I wasn't taking lessons. Started taking lessons at 10. So I got into it fairly early. Actually, I just had a conversation with Luke about this. I was like, I feel like 10 years old, like I was a little late to the game. He was like, I was 11. He's like, I don't think we were late. He's like, you just see a lot of the prodigies, you know, out there that are doing it at 5. I'm like, you're right. I'm like, it's totally a perspective thing. So we got into it fairly early on. I think you probably are right around the same time, 14, 15, when you started producing, it sounds like.
When I started producing?
Yeah, because you were in electronic music first?
Yeah, well, I learned guitar first.
Oh, you did? Okay.
I learned that when I was in 3rd grade.
I don't think I ever asked that about you.
Yeah, guitar is my first
learning
instrument I ever
something here.
learned.
Yeah.
I took a couple years of guitar, and then I took a couple years of piano. And then in high school, that's when I learned about dubstep, and I'm like, I want to do that. Because I hadn't made music for a couple years in between those two things.
Totally. And there's a point to this real quick, but why did you get into music at first?
Because guitars were cool.
because they were cool.
'Cause I was a little kid.
You liked it.
Yeah,
You
I was
liked
a
it.
little kid. Guitar was cool, and I wanted to do it.
Yep, same. That was pretty much the same. I loved music. Thought guitars were sweet. I wanted to play that one, and my parents didn't want me to play the drums. Fun fact. So they made me play guitar, and they
What's
made me
behind
play.
you right now?
They made me play right-handed because I originally gravitated towards left-handed guitars
Really?
at first. So they switched me early on, so I would have more access to different guitars.
You know what?
later
That
in life.
saved you a lot of money.
Yes, it did.
That saved you a lot of
fucking
money.
bless their hearts, because that's awesome. So we got into it for the love of it.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying right there. Is that if you're getting into it to be famous, if you're getting into it to find the fortune in there, which is really hard to get to, I think you're building off the wrong reasons to do it. And I think that shaky foundation can come back to haunt you real quick, especially when you're goal setting. And if you're not making it to where you want to go quick enough, right? That rocky foundation will set you up to fail later on because it's not solidified in something that you love to do necessarily, right? I think that's where I'm coming with this point. And you can add on if you feel like I didn't explain that well, but it's very philosophical, perspective on that. So starting off with just wanting to be famous.
Yeah, I think you explained it well.
Yeah.
I do want to add on that. Honestly, starting music because you want that kind of fame and fortune, that public eye, that can be okay if that's really
Absolutely.
if that's really what you want.
Yep.
If that is the end all be all goal,
It can be a
of
great
yours.
motivator.
It can be.
Yep.
Just expect to not have it for a long time.
Yeah. Not saying that you can't get there.
Yeah, it's just going to take time.
It's just going to take time.
And even if you aren't going in because you want fame and fortune, if you're going in for certain reasons. Moving on, do you mind if I move on real quick?
Please.
So even if you are going in for different reasons, financial issues are the next big reason why a lot of artists fall off.
Yeah.
And to wrap up kind of the combination of the two, the foundational issues and the financial issues, if you are getting into it and you're not making money and you're not building a career as fast as you want to, a quick thing you can do to kind of stay motivated and still be fulfilled is to kind of take some time, sit back, look at why you got into music and write down what are ways where I am receiving it? What are some other quote unquote currencies that I'm getting paid for to play my music? This is a concept that I got from an episode of the DIY Musicians podcast by CD Baby. And it's about just playing music can honestly be a reward of itself. If you go for the love of music, just being able to go out and play with 3, 5, 8 guys and just jam on stage, even if it's to nobody out there, just being able to be around these musicians you love playing with and respect, that's a currency of itself.
Yeah.
So sit down and write, why did I get into this? What am I doing this for? And other than money, what are some things I'm getting back from doing this? Because if you go in with that mindset, even when these things hit you in the face, like, oh, I'm not getting paid, I'm struggling with this, that's just another way to kind of reframe your mind to make sure that you are getting paid no matter what you're doing.
Yeah. And this is actually like a kind of like an economics thing. I think it's highlighted under utility and economics. Basically, it's just a way to kind of like figure out like your happiness scale on some things, on your choices that you make. There's no set points for it, or there's no set denomination for it. Like, it's not like, oh, I get 50 cool points for this, or I get 50 happy smiley faces for this. So this is
You
just
get a gold star.
Yeah, exactly, right? Like, this isn't like like an actual physical currency, but this kind of currency that we're talking about, a very philosophical one, can go a long way in how you, I think, find, like Sean said, like find your love again for the music, or find your purpose again for being in music. And you definitely have to take those into consideration, because not everything's about monetary value.
For sure, for sure. But speaking of, going back again to monetary value, financial issues
now
are
actually hard monetary value here.
Exactly.
So,
And a big part of it is that if you go in kind of expecting to be able to pay your way right off the bat with the music you make, and if you go in kind of thinking, oh, it's just going to work out, it's going to happen to me, you're going to get your teeth knocked out real quick, because it does take a lot of time. It does take a lot of effort, a lot more than can be expected.
I think,
and since it does take a while to recost, because there are a lot of upfront costs. There are startup costs to doing this. You have to pay to go into a studio, pay to get it mixed and mastered, pay to get stuff for the stage performance, the lighting, the things like that. If you have to bring it your own, pay for a small PA so you can do acoustic gigs, pay for the merch to sell at your booth. Don't do these, but sometimes people will try to get you to pay to play at their venue.
Yeah, that's a really common one.
Yeah.
Very common.
And underestimating how much money it takes to get in up front, it can put a strain on your wallet and cause you to have to quit prematurely because you had to make a bigger upfront investment.
Very much so.
And I'm just going to real quick say, like, kind of ways to go combat this is to, like, you may need to learn some skills to evolve what you can do to do it on a budget. Learn to record at home.
Yep.
It's a lot cheaper to buy a Scarlett bundle or a Volt and a SM7B or whatever and record your music at home and learn that skill versus paying $60, $80, $120 an hour at a studio to go in and get it mixed and then send it out to a different mastering engineer and then dueling, all that stuff. So that's a good way to kind of save money, is to learn skills. And then you can also use those skills you gain to introduce yourself and connect with other musicians and help them out. So that's better down the line as well.
And those skills that's a very great way to invest in yourself, is by learning those skills. So later on, when you get into these situations, let's say you go to a big studio, you know what you're talking about, you know, to your engineer there, or you can at least effectively communicate at least like a tiny bit better on what you want to hear or versus what you know already just by doing it.
And even additionally to that, you can learn more because you have that foundation.
Yes.
You can't learn if you don't know the right questions to ask.
So that was always a big thing, is people were like, how did you get started in this? I was like, well, I had to learn how to ask a question effectively, because like you can ask whatever you want in music. I mean, just anything in general, but music production I'm focused on right now. You can ask like, oh, how do I do this? And you'll get 35 different results that don't give you that answer that you're looking for. So you have to be very specific in how you ask those questions. So Sean breaks up a very, very, very great point that I always try to illustrate to people, is like, have to be able to at least have a little bit of knowledge to be able to actually frame the questions to get an effective answer that you want back. Or you're going to go on a really big journey down a rabbit hole that you don't need to go down. I've been there, done that.
Which can be fun in its own
It can
right.
be fun, and you can learn a lot of stuff that way, which is really cool. But if you're trying to do it like within a certain time constraint, you know, and keep it like very efficient, that's definitely a good point that you bring up. Yeah. I want to say another financial issue that we don't have written down, but even going to get into music at this point, so let's say prospective musicians maybe listening to this, you hear a lot of gloom and doom where you make how many pennies off a stream in Spotify? It's like 0.00017 of a penny every stream or something like that. You hear how hard it is to try to make a living on your music. And that can be deterring within itself if that is your goal, is to start a career in it, right? Sean just pulled it up. 0.003 of a penny per stream. That is remarkably low.
0.003 of a dollar.
Of a dollar. Sorry. Yeah.
So it's 0.3 of a penny.
Yeah. Thank you for correcting that, because that would have been that would have been way more brutal. So like if you see these gloom and doom things on the news or through magazines or whatever, wherever you consume your media from, that can be demotivating within itself too. And that's already starting you off on a very scarcity mindset driven perspective of the music industry, and might deter you from thinking more positively along your journey. So that might actually influence your choices later on. It can be like a negative feedback loop kind of thing. So that can be another financial issue, but more of a mindset issue going into it.
Yeah. And one way to kind of get around most of the things we talk about with financial issues, especially when you're starting off, even when you're doing it for a while, is to have a part-time job. Something that just helps you fall back, pay the bills, cover your expenses. If it can be flexible, that's fantastic. There's a philosophy of try not to get a job you enjoy too much, because you're still going to have to put your effort into your job, and that can take away from the energy you have afterwards to focus on your music. So there's the philosophy of doing something you don't want to do. So when you get off of it, you're motivated to make music more, you're able to spend your time more wisely. You have more of a focus on what you need to do with your limited amount of time versus, oh, I like my job, I'll just keep doing this, I don't have to worry about music anymore. And then eventually you kind of stop making music. Not saying that's one way to or not to do it, just kind of that's a philosophy behind it. What I will say is that having a part-time job can honestly increase your creativity, increase your creative freedom, and boost your output on what kind of music you're making. Because if you have that backup, you have that thing that pays the bills, you no longer have to worry about commercial viability of your music. You don't have to worry about getting it popular out there quick as possible, and you can really spend time experimenting, trying new things, and just do what you want to do, stand out from the crowd, because you're allowing yourself to really be creative. And then eventually, over time, as you keep on doing it, having that unique aspect, having that growth throughout your music could bring in fans and build you up over time. That's your own kind of differentiator.
Totally.
And there's a less stress of it. So
Great point. Great point. Let's move on to our next really big topic. We have one in between that we'll mention somewhere along the way, but we're going to move on to like character issues. And this kind of has to do with how you carry yourself as a person up to this point. things that I included under this personally was being like hard to work with or hard to collaborate with. If you're not willing to like work with other people or see other people's sides of things, or even hear ideas. Yeah, what'd you say?
Then you're Steely Dan.
Yeah, right. Then it's going to be really hard for you to network and collaborate with other people along the way. And that's what music's all about. Very communal activity. Always has been to its roots. Actually, now it's been more separated than ever, I feel, because people can do it by themselves.
Yeah. I've heard ELO was kind of that way too.
I'm sorry?
I heard ELO was kind of that way too. Really specific about what their vision was and not really letting inside perspective.
Sure. And you know, and like fine. And like that's fine. You know, that's fine to a point, but just know that it's going to be a little bit harder along the way.
Well, especially if you're in a band or a group.
Yeah, exactly.
You need to be a good hang.
Yeah. It's so funny because like a lot of the time I feel like I'm talking to individuals on this, right? Just a side note.
Are we talking about Brandon?
I'm talking to like no, just like solo artists. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Like a hip hop dude or a singer songwriter, you know. Then Sean approaches it from the band's perspective, and I love that because like we balance each other out. Because I'm very much like I'm talking to one person that is going to get set up for the first time who doesn't have a band, you know what I'm saying? And then Sean's talking about the bands, the communal, you know, the very communal groups out there. So I just want to say that I really appreciate that. So
well, this can
really nice.
I appreciate that. This can really bite you back hard if you're hard to collaborate with, if you are a solo artist, or even if you're in a band. Let's say you have a song that you want to throw accordion on, or like banjo or whatever, a flute, whatever, and you don't play banjo, and you have to hire a session musician to come in and play the banjo, and you have an idea in your head. Well, they're never going to get the idea that's right in your head. Yep. So you have to be able to give up some sort of creative control.
Yeah, there's a give and take.
Just kind of let them explore it a little bit. I've worked with people who have the complete opposite approach, and honestly, it's so fun. If give it a shot, if you want to kind of go in all in and learn how to let go of creative control and just kind of see how music forms and what happens. Yeah, I had an artist I worked with named Colin. He had a band called Ship and Sail, one of the first guys I ever worked with, and his approach was crazy. He would come in with an acoustic guitar. We would play to a click, record his vocal a couple times, and I would comp it, edit it down so it was just an acoustic guitar and a vocal. And then he had a bunch of friends that were in different bands throughout the scene, and he would book sessions for them to come in without him. Oh, wow. So the drummer would come in without him, and we would just spend an hour or two recording the drums and laying it down to the foundation. And then he'd have a bassist come in without him to play on top of the drums. And he would bring like celloists in, violinists in, backing vocals, and all these things. And then he'd come in at the very end, and we would re-record his vocal on top of everything, so that he can change his inflection to kind of match what the song has become. Yeah. And he always come and be like, man, this is so cool. I never thought of it this way. I never thought it would go this way.
That's really cool.
And it always turned out super cool because these artists were able to come in and just really be creative. There were no limitations to it. Wow. In fact, when I had the drummer come in, we literally did like 4 passes of the entire song where he played the whole drum kit and then he just played mallets on the toms to accent certain points. Yeah. Another pass, he just did the cymbals for like rises and fall, like risers and crashes and all that. And then the other pass, I think it was just a cowbell pass or something. Nice, dude. But I was able to do like all these textural things with the drum kit that you couldn't do with just one performance. Totally. That really added to the song. And it was just really cool to see, hey, what are you going to come up with? What speaks to you about this song? And it turned out really cool. So that's a fun project. That's a fun way to get
really cool. I've never thought about doing something like that. That's really unique. That's really neat. And we're not saying like you don't have to sacrifice full creative control, right? You still have a vision, but just be willing to hear other people's side of the story. I think that's what we're kind of getting at, you know? Yeah. It's like just be willing to meet people in the middle at some point.
And also know the perks of, there are positives of letting creative control go a little bit. And we're going to talk about that
for sure
real shortly.
Yeah.
So kind of continuing on with creative differences and like learning when to let go of control. This also means if you are in a band or if you have a team around you, you don't have to be the one that does all the marketing, be your own photographer, be your own copywriter, be your own promoter. You don't have to do all of this stuff. It can be very overwhelming, all the things you have to do to have a successful music career. You have to make merch, bring merch, man the booth. You have to set up before and after the show, talk to the fans, all this. And this is just in a live show setting. If you can somehow offload and have other people help you so you don't feel like you're overwhelmed and feel kind of resentful toward other people in your band and whatnot, where it's like, man, I do all this work and they just get to come in and play and have fun. I wish I could do that, but no, I got to do all this work. You can offload, which can lead to having to let go of some creative controls. Like if you are spending way too much time answering to fans on social media, you can say, hey, bass player, would you mind tackling the fan interaction for me? because that would really open up my plate to focus more on this other stuff. Yeah, okay, cool. You have to let him handle it now, which can be a little bit scary, but it saves you a bunch of time and energy that you can then recuperate from it. If you have fans can really help you with this as well, especially if they're diehard. You can ask them, hey, who wants to come to the show early? We'll get a free ticket and help us load in, load out, and you get a free ticket. Or who wants to man the mirth booch? Booch? Who wants to man our mirth booch? Who wants to man our mirth? This is bad. Who wants to
Merch
man
booth?
our merch booth? We'll get you a free drink at the bar, or we'll get you in for free, or whatever, so that you don't have to worry about it that whole time. You can get someone that is really excited and energetic about your music, who, if you've done it with them before, you trust to help handle this. Same with marketing. Hey, fans of the city, we're going to be here on the 20th of this month, so I'm going to have all these flyers printed. If you want to meet me at a coffee shop this day, I'll get everybody a coffee. We can spend the day going out, putting these flyers around the city, and then we'll come back and we'll just kind of hang out. Do like a meet and greet, whatever, with your fans. That allows you to have like a guerrilla marketing team or whatever. You can utilize these people as ways to make it so that you're not having to put in as much time and as much effort, especially if you are in a band. Everyone has something that they can do, and maybe they're stronger in that regard than you are.
Absolutely.
And even if you are a solo artist and you don't have a lot of fans, you don't want to rely on a lot of fans, if you express how you need help to your family and friends and they want to support you, just ask. The worst they can say is no. And the best they can do is understand that, hey, this is really important. This is what you specifically need for support, not like, hey, I liked your post on Facebook, or like, hey, you should go American Idol. That would be great. You have a great voice. It's like, that doesn't help. But then you can say like, hey, this is specifically what I need. If you want to support me, this would be fantastic. But you have to let go of that creative control.
Yep, absolutely.
And that can be okay.
And if you don't have any of that and you have to hire somebody to be a part of your team, like I know the word team gets thrown around a lot. Team doesn't always infer that people are doing it for free. Your teams should be paid in some sort of way to compensate for their time. Everybody's time is worth something. Yeah. If you do get to a point where you don't have those friends and family, which I'm sorry to hear that, and you don't have that fan background either, and you have to go out and hire a team to do it, then you have to be willing to let go of creative control then. But the best part about it is that if you're hiring a team, these should be pretty well-versed professionals at this point. I think if they're getting hired to do this, they should have some sort of knowledge that you don't have, which makes them even more valuable because then you'll learn something from it too. So I just want to put that out there that the last resort, maybe not last resort, maybe that's saying it wrong, but if we're following the hierarchy that we've already set in front of us, the last resort would be hiring somebody.
Well, kind of like
you can learn something through it.
Kind of like the interview we did with It's Ernie.
Yeah.
He's part of a label.
Yep.
So he's got his team that helps him out there.
Yep.
And they do a lot of things that we just mentioned to kind of take it off of his plate. That's really, really invaluable. So if you can get a good quality recording and you need a little extra help, maybe try to find a label.
Absolutely. Yeah.
That's another option.
And normally we don't push.
But it's always an option.
Yeah, it's an option. It's there.
Be careful.
That's why they exist, right? You got to be careful. Just got to be careful.
You have to advocate for yourself whenever you're doing any sort of selling any sort of what you are, rights to your own music, whatever.
Yes, absolutely.
Try to get a musical lawyer to look over any contract, yada. But we're not going into that today.
Yeah, no, not today. That's not the point for the day. But we do have another point to this. Sean said creative differences. I'm going to talk about creative burnout. Creative burnout is pretty self-explanatory. We've had episodes about this in the past. But creative burnout is basically just when you are creatively not functioning at your highest performance.
I'm spent, Brandon.
It's over.
I can't do this no more.
You're not moved by anything.
Go on without me.
Yeah. You're not moved by anything. You don't feel anything when you listen to music or play music, or you're frustrated with yourself. It's just this negative spiral that you're kind of going down. And that happens sometimes.
Just know it's okay. Everybody hurts.
But yeah, that's basically it. I mean, sometimes this little thing called writer's block happens with creative burnout. And there are ways to kind of circumvent that. Sean has this written down right here, is that you have to give yourself permission to rest at this time and kind of be able to take in just maybe other forms or avenues of like entertainment or change up a routine or just do something different because like you need to kind of like reinvigorate your creative side of things, and you need to be able to rest a little bit. I think I just mentioned that too.
Yeah.
But you need to be able to take time away from that and give yourself the space to kind of like maybe come back to it when you're ready. It's just what happens when you're burnt out is you've done it too much and you just need to go experience something different to get reinvigorated again. But it's still there. Flame's still lit somewhere. It's just about finding it and recapturing big bonfire of a flame.
I'm gonna tell another quick story about that with another client I've had. He's been making music for a long time, and at this point, we just started our 4th album together. But his whole thing is he likes to create music in the spur of the moment. It's all about the creation of it more so than the refinement of it. So it's a very different approach to music. It's more of like a hobby thing at this point, which, you know what? That's phenomenal.
Totally.
Some of the best songs ever are written by hobbyists.
Yep, absolutely.
Done by hobbyists. You don't have to want to dive in too deep right off the bat.
And like, can we say something? There's a stigma against the hobbyist term, right? And that's not necessarily a bad thing. Being a hobbyist isn't a bad thing at all, but it's thrown around like it's a bad thing.
Yeah.
Especially through grind culture that we see a lot through TikTok and stuff. Grind culture is great up to a certain point, and then it gets very toxic very quick. So I just want to say that if we ever say hobbyist and you find yourself as a hobbyist, we are never slandering.
No,
ever.
It's not a negative. In fact, kind of what we said earlier about how having a full-time or part-time job that allows you to really dive into being creative versus having to go for the commercially viable aspect of it. Nothing wrong with commercially viable music.
Yep.
If you want to go for it, that's perfectly fine. That's how we hear most music is through the mainstream. But you can use it as a tool to be more creative and be more yourself. That's what he does. But because he's so involved on the creation process, every time we finish an album, we always have this conversation where he's just nervous about, hey, what if we can't do this again? We've done 12 songs, 14 songs, 10 songs, whatever. What if the next album doesn't turn out? What if we don't vibe anymore? What if things change? What if life happens? What if my juice is gone? He always has this fear, which is a whole mindset of its own. It's a scarcity mindset,
very much so,
versus the growth mindset aspect of it. But it exists, and it's not uncommon for people to have that. Like, man, I haven't written a song in 5 months. What if I can't write music anymore? What if it's hard for me now? What if I've lost my mojo? That is also where kind of letting go of creative control can really be beneficial. If you bring somebody else in or collaborate or let somebody else take a lead so they can come up with something that they're excited about and let that energy wash over you and flood into you and lead you to be creative on top of it. You don't have to be the sole provider of everything music that you're doing. Listen to new music, try new techniques, learn new scales, learn new tunings, things like that. And let go of that control, let go of what you are. Oh, I'm a pop punk band. I can only have these sounds, this kind of music. That's all I'm doing. Maybe you find a metal band you like and you want to introduce some of those guitar techniques into your music.
Yeah.
Try it out. Evolve. You hear some bedroom pop producer doing something like a vocoder or one, and you're like, oh, that'd be really cool. Maybe I can try that in like a background vocal effect or do some things with that. If you keep evolving, that is how you keep changing and growing and staying interested and invested.
Yeah, to your point, I mean, a couple bands even come to mind. The main one, a lot of people probably know at this point, Sleep Token. Have you heard of Sleep Token before?
No.
They're a very interesting band. Interesting band.
Yes, I have.
Yeah. They're very good. I'm not a massive fan of the vocals, but I'm a massive fan of the instrumental part. They have such a unique blend that you think wouldn't work, but they do it really well. And that's the kind of stuff that gets fostered through this kind of new introductions to different people, different techniques, genre blending. And that can be really helpful in aiding you into finding a unique sound that's unique to you. And you never know, right, with these unique sounds, what could be the next big thing. I hate saying that. That sounds really like, buy this course now and you'll be the next big thing. That's not what I'm trying to say.
It's the next big thing.
Right. Get in early because the fire's hot, right? Yeah. But you never know though, right? Like you can kind of find something that's like, that really sparks some kind of community around you, and then that just blows up, right? I hate saying blow up because that's another marketing like thing, but you know what I'm trying to say here. I'm not trying to be like buy now. So yeah, but I mean even to your point, I remember back when I first started doing this, like when I was working with people and then they go work with somebody else, I always saw it as like was I not good enough, And this was really early on. I'm talking like probably like 10 years ago, early on. You know what I'm saying? And I used to be like, damn, like, what did they do that I didn't have? And then now I'm like, when people will go work with other people now, I'm like, good. Let me know how it goes because I'm interested to hear what you guys come up with because like you're going to learn something. Now I'm going to hear it. I'm going to learn something. And guess what? We're probably going to end up working together with that new person or whatever, you know, and it's a great networking thing, Yeah,
exactly. If you have the mindset of, I'm not going to treat you as a competition. It's more of like, hey, we're all in this business together. We're trying to bring each other up. Like, hey, what'd you learn from this other guy? Let's talk about your music. Why'd you try this kind of sound? Learn from that and grow from it.
And guess what? Letting that mindset go, that scarcity mindset go, saves you a lot of heartache. Because then You won't fester on it anymore. You won't be looking through Instagram anymore and being like, well, I'm mad because they're working with somebody else now, right? Like, you'll be able to be creatively you. And that's what we're looking for.
So I'm going to move on to the next reason why sometimes musicians quit. And this is, we brought up earlier, I mentioned how some of these are more large scale versus more independent artists or small scale problems that musicians face. And that is kind of like changing trends. Genres that are popular change. Artists that people enjoy come and go. And the sounds that people are really interested in are always evolving. That's part of the reason why I said earlier, learn, try new techniques, see what's popular now and try to maybe take what you want, take what you like from it, incorporate into what you're doing. So you're always evolving, changing your style. There's always gonna be people who say, I like the sound of the old stuff better. But you know, that's how you, one, you stay creatively fulfilled. Two, you stay creatively relevant because what people like changes. All these huge things eventually die out. 2 examples. 1, disco.
Yeah, that's a good, that's like top example.
Huge. And then it just died out. It was no longer what people played in the clubs. It was no longer the big movement. It was no longer the style of the era.
Very bright for a very short amount of time. Like 10 years, decade. It's a pretty short amount of time in music.
The second one that I learned recently about how it died out, kind of, is hair metal. That was huge. There are still the big ones that everybody knows of, but there used to be a bunch of different knockoff bands or other bands. Like, you know, it was a whole tier thing, like any genre. There's the big ones and there's like things influenced behind or copycat artists behind or whatnot. And then Nirvana came out. Yeah.
It's so funny because...
And it killed hair metal.
Because like we classify these genre shifts in decades. And it's so funny because the hair metal stuff, right when it hit the 90s, I swear to God, it was like hitting a fucking brick wall. Because then it was like, boom, grunge. You know what I'm saying? Because like Nirvana was like 91, very early 90s, you know? And then all of a sudden that was like, yep, this is the top now. Like hair metal hit such a big wall so fast that it was absolutely insane. Because you had Motley Crue blowing up, doing their thing, you know what I'm saying? Twisted Sister. I mean, dude, like bands in the 80s, dude. And then all of a sudden that 90s change, boom, gone.
Yep.
Very quick. And they really did try to sustain that through the 90s. And it was just overpowered by grunge at that point. Don't look now. Here's a hot take. Might not be that hot. Hip hop, right now, we're starting to see a decline.
Really?
Absolutely. I think just in the type of music that's coming out, people's reactions to the music, we're going to start seeing a trend here soon. And this trend, we're on the very early stages of this trend, but I don't think hip hop will be the dominant genre anymore, at least within the next 5 years, I would say.
Yeah.
Unless something happens within the genre itself that shifts a little bit. I think just preferences are changing these days. What we want to hear and what we demand are changing. And the genre, I think, is starting to get away from what made hip hop originally. So I mean, maybe somebody can clip this in 5 years and be like, this dude was totally wrong. But I want to say right now that it is changing right before our very eyes. So just get ready.
Yeah, so we'll see what kind of comes up and takes the place. Because, yeah, trends always come and go. That's just kind of how it is. And you have to evolve as an artist to stay relevant, especially if you're not on the top of your game. There are mega stars, mega bands where no matter what, they were the king of the genre in its heyday, and they're still going to have a fan base when the genre dies because they were the known ones. They're still going to survive. It's all the ones that were growing or below that all of a sudden, when they could fill up 1,000-room theaters, now they can barely get 100 people to come to a club or a bar because they don't have that kind of draw because that genre is not the main thing anymore. Not to say like you always have to chase the trends. Don't do that. But if you are constantly growing and evolving, it kind of helps combat that because you kind of develop your own sound that can thrive throughout any sort of major trend change. And I think it's happening less and less. It's harder for that big switch to happen. Disco's not going to die overnight. Like, I mean, that's not going to happen again. Hair metal dying overnight. That's not going to happen again because Spotify, streaming, the internet is
the availability
so
of music
vast.
is so much bigger these days. I mean, infinitely bigger, actually. Like, seriously. So it's no longer gate kept behind like specific labels or whatever the case may be.
What's big is no longer what's being pushed.
Exactly, because you can find anything you want. And honestly, it's so hard to determine what's the most popular thing these days because everything seems like it's popular. You know, you can find fans of this, like fans of grunge. You can find fans of math rock, right? Like it's very social construct thing of what's popular now, right? But really, you can go find it wherever you want. It's not being gate kept behind a certain sound.
Yeah,
I guess
yeah.
if
It's
that
not
makes
like you
sense.
go on the radio and this is what
Exactly.
you hear, so this
Yep.
is what you like.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like set up by decade or by generation to be like this is the sound of the
Yes.
generation.
Better way to say it.
Yeah.
Mine was a very wishy-washy way to say it.
Yeah.
That
I mean,
was
you
way
look at the
better.
60s, the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, they had sounds of the generation, sounds of the decade.
Yep.
The British invasion, disco, all that stuff.
Now it's like
Rockabilly, all
you
that
have
stuff.
sound,
We
you
have
have
sound.
music,
You can do whatever you want. You can make it
whatever
work.
you want, dude.
Yep. Yep. To kind of end this off, I kind of want to wrap around to the very first thing we talked about, which was kind of foundational issues and financial issues and whatnot. Through those, we kind of talked about how if you start off trying to start as a career right away, it could be a brick wall that's hard to climb right off the bat. So the last thing that kind of gets a lot of musicians to quit is just slow growth and a long time for results. It can be disconcerting when you've been doing it for a year or 2 or 3 and you're just barely seeing the needle move, if at all. If you've been doing it for like 15 years and the needle hasn't moved, maybe it's time to kind of be a little self-reflective.
For
If it's
sure.
been that long of a time.
Yeah.
But even then, sometimes it just takes time.
Yeah, that's
But,
true too. That is true too.
But it can be very disconcerting. And like treating music as a career right away, those expectations lead to stress, lead to burnout, which we just kind of talked about.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. I'm going to make this analogy and you can let me know if it's decent or not. So
Will this get cut from the episode?
will this get cut? Stay tuned. All of a sudden it cuts. It's like, yeah, that got cut.
I'm not putting the episode, man. That was cut.
Damn.
Just kidding. He's going to talk about it now.
So I like to think of this as through the lens of actors and actresses. And I think the reason why I like doing this is because a lot of actors and a lot of actresses sometimes don't get their big break until they're like 60 years old. And they might not even be working and acting for that long at this point either, right? I think it just goes to show that you can have success at any age, at any stage along the way, as long as you're doing it well and just putting yourself out there in general. But you also have to work really hard at it too, right? So I'm thinking like Bryan Cranston had a lot of really great roles before Breaking Bad, but Breaking Bad was one of his arguably biggest roles, if not the biggest role he has had as Walter White, right? And that didn't come until what? He was like 50 something, right? And he's been acting for years. Definitely was someone that's super inspirational, just a fantastic actor. But I think that just goes to show like there's longevity in this. You can do this at any stage that you want, especially these days. Now, piggybacking to music, it's not always the case. I would argue sometimes it's definitely harder to make it bigger when you're older. And that seems to be the general consensus from a lot of people too, unless you can think of like a specific situation that kind of disproves that. But like a lot of the time it always feels like, oh, it's an 18-year-old, it's a 20-year-old, it's a 25-year-old, right? And then at that point it's like, okay, well,
But let's
is there
talk
room
about
for
it,
me?
though.
Yeah, please.
We are.
Because I'm trying to discredit what I just said, right? So
You're 28, right?
Mhm.
I'm 26.
Mhm.
So like most of our experience with big musicians are throughout our lifespan where they were at 18, 20, 25 or whatever.
Mhm.
There's plenty of artists who don't even start until they're later in life. Like
Right.
Leonard Cohen, he didn't start until he was in his 30s.
Yep.
Pharrell Williams, Happy, his big hit, he was 40 when that
that's
released.
great example. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So like it can happen later in life. There are artists who don't even pick up an instrument until they're in their later stages of life.
Mhm.
And while maybe they're not going to be the ones that kind of grow up with the people who are themselves growing up, like right now, Olivia Rodriguez,
Yeah.
she's huge in the demographic of the next generation that's coming up because that's the demographic that she herself is in.
Absolutely.
And when you are younger, you are able to tie more of your identity to music because this is a whole philosophy thing we could go on about.
Mhm.
When you're growing and developing and you're a teenager, that's why music can be so important because you have all this stuff going on. You don't know what you're doing in life, what's going on, and you're learning new things. And music can be that tie, that cultural thing that brings you together. Oh, you're a fan of this artist? I'm a fan of this artist. We're automatically similar in that regards.
Mhm.
Whereas, because like you're a teenager, you're a kid, you can attach yourself to these identities because you don't have all this other stuff going on. You're not expected to have your life sorted out. Keyword expected, just because you're older. And if you're still struggling, that's a whole different thing. That's
Yeah,
okay.
for sure.
Not going to go into therapy today. But as you're older, more of our identity has been sorted out. We have these artists that we grew up with And when people do get big later in life, they still have a huge fan base. They can
Mhm.
still grow,
Mhm.
but it's less of like, I am a fan of this artist. This is my identity. Whereas when you're growing up, that's kind of what you tie yourself to. So it's
Mhm.
more of a quiet fame, I
Totally.
would say,
Yeah.
than a loud fame.
Yeah. Agreed.
Yeah.
Great way to put it.
Yeah.
Great
And
way
while
to
we're
put it.
not like young, we're not old.
Mhm.
So
right. That's true. That's true.
we only talk about our experience about which artists we've seen blow up in our lifetime.
Mhm.
And it's been tied to artists that were relatively the same age range or talking
Right.
about the stuff that we struggled with.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yep. That's great.
So that's my 2 cents on
I
that.
love it. I love it. That's great. That's great. I hope mine doesn't get cut.
Well, I spoke on it, so they're not going to get cut now.
That's great.
I'm just kidding.
Oh, okay. I see how it is. I see how it is. You are the editor. So
I'm just kidding. It was a good point. Yeah. I'm not.
that seemed very half-assed.
That's a good point.
It was an all right point.
Yeah, it was all right. It
It's
was
not a 1-to-1 comparison,
It wasn't
but
dog shit. I was channeling my inner Gordon Ramsay. Cooking reference. Haha. Okay.
you donut.
Another thing that can aid to slow growth and poor results is if you don't have like a clear vision or realistic goals in your music career.
Mhm.
You know, like not having patience for it, setting your goals too high, too unrealistic, too fast. We talk about the 10x rule, things like that in past episodes of how setting a higher goal can push you to doing more and trying to achieve higher in your field and your career and what you're doing can be a positive in that regards. But being too strict to it, like making sure like, oh, if I don't hit 50,000 followers in 1 year, that I'm a failure, being that hard stance, that can be a little bit negative.
Yeah.
Not saying setting them too high is too bad of a thing, as I
Right.
just said, but not hitting them if you are put too much emotional weight behind that goal can lessen your
Great way to say it.
self-esteem.
Yep.
As we mentioned, ways kind of around it, like earlier on, that's kind of why I said this kind of ties back to foundational issues and financial issues, is that if you have a part-time job, that can help fund stuff so that when you do have slow growth, you're not hurting in your wallet, you're not hurting too bad from it, and you're able to kind of take it slow and have the mentality of, oh, if I don't hit 50,000 this year, it's not going to be the end of the world.
Mhm.
I'm not going to be kicked out of my apartment and on the streets. It allows for that kind of mental freedom
Yeah.
and not being too hardlined on those skills. Same thing as before, learning new skills, learning how to record on a budget, how to market yourself, all these things help. And asking for help from your friends, your family, your fans, all that also allows you to wear the weather, wear the storm of
Mhm.
the fact that it just takes time to grow. It takes a lot of effort to grow. However effort you think it might take, I guarantee you it's going to take a lot more than what you're thinking right now.
Yeah, probably.
Even if you've like, oh, well, I've already multiplied it by 10, it's going to take more than that.
Yeah. Yeah. You should set yourself up for a mountain for
Yeah.
sure. Yeah. Yeah. You wouldn't go hiking without hiking gear, right?
Yeah.
Oh, you would?
I've done it. It wasn't smart, but I've done it.
Like up a huge ass mountain.
That was pretty big. It was the Adirondacks in New York.
Were you prepared for it? Did you have water with you or anything?
Yeah, I had food and water.
Ah, there
But I
we
had
go.
tennis-
So
I had
there was a
tennis
little bit of
shoes.
preparation ahead because you knew it was going to be a big trek.
I did, yeah.
See, that's what I'm saying. Is that?
I wasn't trying to prove you wrong. I'm just being a little shit.
I know. But you should prepare to like traverse that mountain
Exactly.
ahead of you, and then make sure that you are solid with your necessities.
Learn. Next time I do it, I'm going to have my hiking boots,
Exactly. Would you wear flip flops?
running shoes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So you were like halfway there.
Yeah, they were used to getting miles on, just
That's
not
good.
not the climbing aspect of it. They weren't really durable.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, have you gone
That's fair.
hiking?
Have I been hiking?
Yeah.
Does it look like I've been hiking, Sean? Look at me. No, I haven't.
You look more fit than the hikers in Pokemon.
That's fair.
Yeah.
Yeah, they are big dudes.
They're big dudes.
They're big dudes.
Yep.
Um,
So I don't know. Maybe you do.
I have never been hiking, unfortunately. Not up anything like serious.
Yeah. Do I
Just-
go hiking?
Sure.
Okay,
Right
cool.
now.
Not right now.
You know how cold it is out there, guys?
Oh, it's 2 degrees outside.
Yeah. And if it's even 2 degrees right now,
It-
I have no idea.
It showed 2 on my car.
Did
when I
it?
pulled in
Okay, so
here.
yeah, 2 degrees. The wind chill's got to be like -20. Anyways, I want to make this last point that we have under here real quick.
Please do.
This is also kind of goes back to foundational stuff. So we're kind of starting and ending with like the same places.
Yeah.
This is very elementary though.
Full circle. You could start
Super.
the episode all over again, skip the
banter.
appetizer, and then pretty much be exactly where you
Although
started.
I thought it was a great appetizer,
I had a lot of fun with it,
but I'm a little biased. So
expressing my disdain.
we'll talk about that later. This one circles back to something very elementary.
My dear
And-
Watson.
What?
I said, my dear Watson.
Okay.
You said elementary.
Okay.
This is the unhinged part of the episode. We're at over the hour mark.
Yeah,
so.
this is when we start getting loopy. Is taking it too big of a leap too fast, and like we kind of just touched on that, but I'm talking like in sort of a musical ability perspective. You started lessons at what, 13? You said.
I said third grade.
Third grade.
So
you said third grade.
Maybe I was 9.
Yeah, 9, 10. That's
Something
about
like
when
that.
I started too. We've had that musical foundation for quite some time at this point. I'm not saying that you have to go out and take lessons, but you have to have some sort of a musical foundation to continue into music and to make music, unless you use autotune. Have anything to say about that, Sean?
Move on.
I was baiting you. I tried really hard.
You know what's good for you.
So yeah, just knowing general musical knowledge, general musical abilities, that you don't have to play an instrument necessarily. Like one of the best instruments is your voice. So as long as you're, trying to use your voice and trying to match pitch on like keys or something, knowing some basics of piano will take you an awful long way. Knowing basics on just like, I guess any instrument, but I would argue piano is probably the most beneficial.
In terms of, versatility.
Exactly.
Just because of how it incorporates in DAWs and samplers.
Absolutely.
And synthesizers and all that. Yeah.
Being able to keep like a rhythmic structure of something going on is extremely beneficial. I've met people myself that cannot handle a rhythmic structure of anything. So like rhythmic feels very innate, I feel like, in nature. So like I'm not even sure how you would necessarily teach rhythm at that basic foundation. I'm not even trying to be like I'm the best. Like I really don't know.
So here's a fun tip that I've learned from a drummer buddy of mine, when he was really like, when he was drumming for a band called Rumors, local metal band, got decently sized.
Yeah.
But he would, whenever he was driving in the car and he had his turn signal on, he would practice his rhythm patterns on his lap.
Nice.
Using the tempo of the turn signal as the metronome. So if you're at a red light for a while, you just click it on, like, might not be able to hear that, but like, hit your lap or hit like the middle console or the steering wheel or whatever, and kind of
beatboxing the mic,
something like that. Just beatbox. No, but he would just use that as kind of his metronome. And since he was driving a lot, he always had something that he could, for a couple seconds, just kind of tune in, practice in, dial in his sense of rhythm. And then, he would try to carry it on a little bit after the turn signal turned off, and then turn it back on and see if he was still on the tempo or things like that. So that's just a really bare bones way that he kind of snuck in practicing rhythm.
Definitely.
Wherever he went.
It's a great way to do it. Yeah. I've never tried it myself, but I've always tried to align my turn signals with other people's. I'm wondering what BPM we're at right now.
I have no idea.
No, but I think this just goes to speak to the fact, just have some sort of musical foundation or ability, and then move forward. There's no issue with taking a step back, making sure that you're solid in at least a little bit of musical know-how before you proceed into a recording studio. You're gonna want a little bit, before you head in there. So and before you start spending a lot of money on that forefront. So I'm just saying that because it can save you time and money in the long run.
It can.
Yeah.
And the way to kind of mentally get past that without feeling like, I'm not ready for this yet. Just kind of understand that everyone always has room to grow.
Absolutely.
Music is a craft. It is something that can be studied and practiced and rehearsed again and again. Even someone at the top of the game, even virtuosos or maestros or what's it called when you're a prodigy, even prodigies, they haven't hit the ceiling. There really is no limit of music.
Agreed.
Because it's so vast and so varied. Maybe, this is the best piano player in the world. Yeah, but he could get better at guitar.
Yep.
There's no ceiling. There's no ceiling.
Yep, no ceiling. But there is a floor.
There's a floor.
You need to at least have something.
Yes.
Yes.
But don't be too hard on yourself. Understand that, hey, I maybe just know the basic chords on the guitar, but even someone who can shred the world away, they have room to improve. It's not like you are necessarily lacking, like you need to stop or give up because you see these artists and musicians that are so much better. No, they have room to grow too. It's just all a craft. It's all a journey. It takes time. Give yourself permission to fail, grow, try new things, and rest.
Yes.
And take it easy.
Absolutely.
So that's kind of how I'm gonna end all that off.
I like that. That was good. Nice ending, dude.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, nice way to wrap up.
I've told you I don't really like wraps at restaurants, right?
No.
No?
No, why?
They just never, the tortillas never taste good. It's never
They're always
good
stale.
quality. It's always stale. It's always too floury. But
that's valid.
Yeah.
I agree with that.
I like making my own wraps, but I don't like
Oh,
wraps.
same.
I don't like
love
wraps at restaurants.
Love wraps.
Yeah.
Wraps are the best.
Exactly.
What? I get that. Sometimes they're mid.
Sometimes. Yeah. So that's how we wrap it up.
You want to send this off, Sean?
I kind of do.
Let's do it. I'm ready.
With that all being said, I hope this helped you in some regard. If you're struggling with any of these, listen back. Hopefully these suggestions we have to get past it can be of an aid to you so you can continue to make music, keep going along this journey that we're all going along. So eventually we can put in the time, effort that it takes to make it in the music business. If there's anything you're struggling with, reach out, let us know at musicmakerspodcast.com. I mean, podcast at musicmakerscookbook.com, or DM us on any of our socials, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, or leave a comment down below this video, or respond to our question on Spotify. We have questions in every single Spotify episode.
Yes, we do.
With that all being said, if this is your first time listening, thank you for getting through this whole thing.
Thank you.
We really appreciate it. If you've listened to us before, thank you for tuning in. Once again, please share this with other independent artists, other musicians that you know, so that this podcast can grow. We can help other artists make it. We can all rise up together. This is a journey for all of us. We can learn from you guys what you're doing, what you would like to learn more about, and we can provide better episodes moving forward. This is our first structured episode of this year.
Yes. It feels good to be back.
It feels good to be back. We've got a lot more coming out. We've already got us scheduled all the way through February, so stay tuned for that. We're going to be dropping knowledge bombs, trying out new things. My studio is almost done.
That's great, dude.
So we can finally make some short-form videos.
Yeah, dude.
Super excited about that. But all that being said, thank you for coming in. Thank you for cooking with us inside of our kitchen. It's time for us to close.
Auto-tune.